1. This happened when I was 15 years old. I was at a cousin's birthday party with my sister, who was 17 years old. When it was time to leave, we had agreed with my parents that my uncle and dad would pick us up. The party was only around 10 minutes away from my house, and it was past midnight, so the streets were empty for the most part. So my sister and I went outside of the party to wait for my dad. That had said, he was pretty much outside of the place. But apparently, while waiting for us back at home, they had a few drinks, so when he said he was pretty much there, he actually meant they were taking their sweet time actually coming to pick us up. So we were waiting on the sidewalk when a group of men in their mid-20s noticed us. A pair of small girls alone at night. Not only that, but it was evident that they were drinking by the way they talked and the cans of beer they left behind to come to us. I suffer from social anxiety, so seeing them already had me in a mini panic and I froze. Then they reached us. One of them immediately reached for my shoulder and invited me to drink with them, while pulling me towards them. My sister, however, doesn't take shit from anyone. She already had a bitch face when she saw them. So when the guy started to pull me, she grabbed my arm, pulling me to the inside of the party again, to wait for my father there. Obviously, the guy didn't give up easily, so he started pulling me too, until they saw a car pulling around the corner of the street. That's when he let me go. Unfortunately, that car wasn't my uncle's, and we had to wait a bit more with them lurking around. When my dad and uncle finally came, I ran to the car, while my sister calmly got in, like if nothing had happened just a few minutes ago. Now I am 23 and I hate alcohol so much I never drink it. I never go to parties anymore. This and one more incident caused me to have panic attacks with the thought of parties and alcohol. 2. The second incident was when I was 19, I think. Fresh into college, I started to hang out with a group of girls who liked to party a lot. So after a lot of pushing from them, and me trying to please them, I agreed to go to another birthday party that happened to be on Halloween. We decided to go to a club, but not to wear any costumes or anything. So on that day I decided to go to a friend's house, let's call her T, and help some friends prepare for the party. But I was the only one that would stay the night there when we got back. Also, T's twin sister would tag along. But she wasn't supposed to drink, thanks to being on some medication. When we got to the party, we were a group of at least 10 girls and 2 boys. The guys disappeared pretty quickly, and also some girls, including T, the girl I was supposed to go back with. That left me alone, so after laughing and recording a guy that pretty much gave a lap dance to a coffin, I sat on the couch most of the night. A group of the girls eventually invited me to dance with them. Most of them were still missing, including T's sister. After a while, T came back with a guy that was not her boyfriend, and her lipstick was all smeared up on the guy's face. We decided it was time to go, and we started looking for her sister. But we couldn't find them anywhere. A girl had told us she went to another party right away, so when T's boyfriend came back to pick us up, we started to search for her in the other clubs nearby. We searched for about an hour. Her phone was off, and it was 6 a.m. Her parents were demanding we came back home. Eventually, T told her mom we lost her sister, and she joined the search for her. She was furious that they split up. After going around for half an hour more, we tried for a second time in a party we were told she was seen, only to see her unconscious being dragged by a guy into an alley. T's boyfriend got her away from the guy and into his car, where we met their mom. Lucky for us, T's sister woke up while this happened. On our way to T's house, the 3 of them were arguing, and me with my anxiety, I started to cry, ugly, messy tears. The mom not paying attention to the road scared me even more, so by the time we got to her house, I was a mess. Unlike them that decided to lie to their father so he wouldn't worry, he had a heart problem. We all went to sleep, but I forgot my meds in the room of T's sister. So by the next morning, the effects of a full-blown panic attack were showing. I felt sick. I cried so hard my head was about to blow up, and with that I started puking non-stop. The father, who had no idea what had happened the night before, thought I went to their house to get drunk without my parents knowing. I called my dad as soon as I could and ran from their home. 3. A little explanation before we start. Way back before most people had access to the series of tubes we call the internet, we had chat lines. Chat lines were phone numbers you could call and talk to people in a kind of group call, and women never had to pay to call in. The one my friends and I used would have you make a brief introduction to verify you were female. Once in the chat, you could speak, and people would send you recorded private messages. Anyway, I come from a small town of about 1,500 people. Not exactly everybody knows everybody, but not unlike it either. My neighbor Jimmy was a cop. My mom was a nurse who also had a substance abuse issue, who worked constantly to feed her addiction, and I was pretty much on my own. Like troubled kids do, I found others like me. We were a group of poor, at-risk kids with shady parents. We were pretty much free range. I was 17 at the time and had entirely given up on school. Instead, I opted to drop out and get a job so I could leave the town and go to college. I got a crappy retail job that paid crap, so I had to supplement my income. Do you see where this is going? I used the chat line to meet men and make money, cash up front. Everyone knew my age was 17, and most of them didn't flinch. One of my friends wanted in on the action, and I was totally against it, but I couldn't stop her. We all used the chat line. Kim was 16 and would not tell them how old she was. I did warn people though when I could, and this made her angry. She stopped talking to me for a couple of weeks. Meanwhile, I'm at the bank trying to make a deposit into my passbook account. Remember those? And my neighbor Jimmy was behind me and sees how much I am depositing, and asks me if my job at the food store had given me a substantial raise. The jig was up, and I came clean. I decided to get a second job in telemarketing off my feet, and all was fine. I had a solid day off a week or so later, and decided to go to where all my friends hung out when not in school. When I get there, Kim was there, and she does the whole mea culpa thing, and tells me she stopped too, because her 36-year-old boyfriend John, that she met on the chat line, told her it was dangerous. So here's this 36-year-old man with 3 kids and no job. He was dirty and unshaven. His clothes were dirty. He smoked like it was his last day on earth, and drank even more. He'd buy everyone alcohol and pot. Some of Kim's friends wanted to try coke, and guess who helped? I tried to warn Kim and her friends. I felt like John was a budding cult leader. Our part of the country seems to be host to such weirdos. I went to Jimmy's door many times and lost my resolve. But honestly, I was scared of John. I was showing my age at this point. I'd never felt so young and so inexperienced. What scared me was that things were moving along quickly. He was now dating Kim and all her friends at the same time. One was like 14. They all knew it too. Drugs and drinking were a constant thing. I heard from one of Kim's friends that he was dealing hard drugs, and that he had a walk-in closet full of weapons that he told them he would kill for them. And then he shows up at my door with the girlfriends in tow, all stoned out of their minds. He's upset with me. I'd made Kim and her friends upset because I was not paying Kim much attention anymore. And I asked one of the other girlfriends about him. They thought I liked him. He told me he would give me money, that if I continued to mess with his ladies by being a shitty friend, he'd kill me and throw me down a mine shaft. He also told me his girlfriends got gifts and drugs and protection, and I should just make the best of it. I told them to go away and shut my door, careful to lock all the doors and windows. I just cried all night. I was 2 months from being 18. I already had my GED. I just needed a bit more money. I did not have enough to up and leave, or I think I would have been on a bus that night. Why I thought closing a door would have worked, I don't know. He was back late that night trying to get in through a window. He was high, very high. He was screaming about the things he wanted to do to me. I won't go into details, but it was graphic. I called the cops in front of him. I was screaming and crying. I hoped all of this was loud enough to get Jimmy's attention, but he wasn't home. He realized I really did call the police and looked at me and said, "Next time I see your cunt mother, she's getting rat poison, bitch." Remember how I said we were kind of like a town where everyone knows everyone? Yeah, he dealt my mother her drugs, and later I found out more. About how he offered my mother a discount if I were his girlfriend. The police called my mom at work, and she said she didn't want anyone talking to me until she got home, since she's home in 5 minutes anyway. The police weren't happy and knew something was up. When she got home, she quickly took me into my room and squeezed my arm, telling me I had better tell the cops I was imagining things, or John was going to rat her out to the hospital. And was having a boyfriend that bad? I was speechless, but did what she said. The cops didn't believe me. They knew something was going on. The female cop said Jimmy told her to tell me, "Hey," and gave me her card. After they left, my mother took the card and ripped it up. Like that was going to matter. She knew Jimmy. I thought maybe things were not as bad as I thought they were. The cops knew something. The next morning, Jimmy was not home, and I had to go to my telemarketing job. It's in an old strip mall, if it's still there at all. There's a receptionist who gets the only window, and the rest of us were in a boiler room with no windows, and an actual boiler. Or water heater, I'm not sure. In other words, I could not see out. Management made us park in the back. After work, guess who's there? John and the gang. As soon as I see them, the girls are charging me and they jump me. They get me all the way on the ground and are kicking and punching me. I throw up and my asthma kicks in. Where was everyone else I worked with? I could hear cars leaving and I felt like I was in Crazy Town. And again I felt helpless and doomed. Someone picks me up. I don't know who because blood is gushing from my broken teeth and broken nose. I couldn't breathe and I was hyperventilating. Next thing I know, I'm in a truck and the bitches are fucking laughing. I think I'm about to die. I'm thinking if I talk to one of the bitches, maybe I can talk her into letting me go after we get to wherever we're going. But I still can't breathe, and mostly I think I'm going to die. I hear mumbled noises, my pulse is pounding in my ears, and I can't really hear anything but my terrible breathing. This goes on forever. It feels like we're moving faster and swerving severely. I feel like I'm going out all the way and then whoomp, we stop violently. My body and all the crap in the trunk move and I'm more hurt than before. The next little bit is gone from my memory. What happened was this. He got pulled over for whatever reason. He panicked. He led a chase and lost when we hit a giant boulder going very fast. The girls in front of his old hoopty were severely injured. He was injured, but had his seatbelt on while the rest of the girls didn't. When the cops caught up with them, someone in the back seat said I was in the trunk. They gave her credit for that when charges rolled out. When I woke up, someone was putting an oxygen mask on me while someone else was doing EMT things. As it would turn out, Jimmy had a former wife a couple times over. She came up pregnant, and he didn't want a fourth kid for the state to write his ass about. She told friends how terrible he was and how violent he was, and when she was about 8 months along, tripped and fell down the stairs. They couldn't get any charges to stick. He had witnesses to say he was not home around the time of death, but he totally did it. He went up for all the drug charges possible, plus kidnapping, plus statutory rape, plus every other charge known to man. None of the girls copped to what he planned on doing with me. They were all charged with what they did to me, most of them being charged as adults. I flipped on my mom and she went to jail too. I did finally get out of that town. Jimmy and I kept in touch for a bit. Then I heard the FBI and some other government entities were in my hometown, because the cops were on the take and dealing drugs themselves. Thanks for sticking with me. I never told anyone this when I moved cross country. Even my husband doesn't know. 4. Let's get straight to the point. I hate basements. In fact, I am petrified of basements. I'm not just talking about those old, dusty, barely any light types of basements. It's every kind of basements. God forbid that you had a nicely decorated and fully furnished basement. I still would not take a step in for a second. Yes, call me crazy and whatnot. But I don't hate basements for no reason. To be honest, I'd never shared this story with anyone that wasn't there, except my best friend. So hopefully, you guys will understand why I'm so traumatized. Every year, my family would hold a Thanksgiving get-together with family and friends. The location would be switched every year. One year it would be my grandparents, another time it would be my aunts and uncles, so on and so forth. This year everyone was at my grandfather's home for the celebration. I was 9 at the time. But even though 18 years had passed, I remember this day like it happened yesterday. Like every Thanksgiving, my family came from different states to celebrate. At that time, we also invited a few close school friends and our next-door neighbors. While the grown-ups stood around and talked, I of course hung out with my few friends and cousins. Becoming bored of the board games, such as Candyland, and card games such as Go Fish, my cousin Kenny thought it was a great idea to play hide-and-seek. I know what you're all thinking. Of course it has to be something like hide-and-seek. Well, of course we all decided that was such an amazing idea. A bunch of 9 to 13-year-olds playing hide-and-seek in a pretty big house. Why not? Sounds fun. So, being one of the oldest, my cousin Carrie took my other cousin Brendan and I with her. We were always close as children, so it was natural we would want to hide together. Since Brendan and I were the youngest cousins of all, she always felt like she had to watch us. Having only about 50 seconds, we had to find a place to hide. After running around and seeing that our other cousins were going towards the closest hiding spots, we decided that we would go down to the basement. A little background story. I have lived in this house for about 4 years of my life at that time. Here and there, I would also have to go down to the basement at least once or twice a week, to maybe grab a ball or a toy of some sort that my parents would place down there. So being in the basement was nothing new, and I really didn't mind it. Nothing creepy ever happened. The basement was also fully furnished with bright lights. It was anything but creepy. When going down the stairs, you would meet up with an open area that was fully furnished with a couch, TV, table, and everything else one would have for any other living room. To one end was a large hallway that would lead to 3 large bedrooms, a full bathroom and a half bathroom. The hallway then turned to the right, which was a door that was locked. That was where my mother would put all her wines in. To keep me from going in there and accidentally breaking one or knocking a shelf down, she and my father would lock it. Now that you kind of have an idea of the layout, let me continue. So Carrie, Brendan, and I left the door to the basement door open, since that is a rule that we had to follow with all of our parents within our family. If we go in any room and away from parental eyes, we have to keep the door open and lights, if it's dark, on, so they knew where we were. Turning on the lights to the whole place, we raced into one of the bedrooms. We didn't turn on the light in the bedroom since we felt it would give our hiding spot away too easily. Giggling, the 3 of us went into the bedroom closet and closed the door, leaving just a little room to be able to peek outside. From the closet, it was easy to see the door and a bit of the hallway. Knowing we could have a clear view, we felt it was a perfect place to hide. Minutes went by, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Here and there we would whisper, but quickly shut our mouths when we found we were whispering too loudly. As time went on, the 3 of us began to wonder why it was taking the others so long to find us. We were about to leave the closet, and just slightly opened it, but quickly closed it back to its original state when we saw a shadow appearing against the wall, outside of the bedroom. Expecting it to be one of our cousins or friends, we held our breath. But as the shadow appeared, it peeked into the doorway and asked, "What are you guys doing here? Come here." Then it walked away. Carrie, Brendan, and I all looked at one another. If anyone could recognize that voice, it would be me. It was no one else but Mother's voice. Sighing, we got out and walked out of the bedroom to see my mother walking around the corner to her winery. Not thinking anything about it, we all followed suit. After all, it would not be strange to find my mother going into her winery to grab a bottle to pop open with the women upstairs. But something didn't feel right. It was a feeling that I would never forget. Once we turned that corner, we saw my mother disappear to the right side of the winery. Strange. The right side led to nothing but a wall. I've been in the room many times with my mother, so I was well aware of nothing being on the right side of that door. I also knew that the floor was made of stone tiles. Whenever my mother would walk into the room, it would always make her shoes go click, click, click upon the floors. There was no chance my mother would not wear shoes into that somewhat dusty room. It was too strange. Immediately, my skin began crawling and my steps came to a stop. All the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, while my body suddenly felt cold. So cold that I couldn't move and my heart seemed to be pounding so fast. It was hard to breathe. Alarms were going off in my head at that moment. Something really was not right. My cousins seemed to not have noticed anything odd and kept walking. As I saw them almost reach the door, I screamed. Not just any type of scream. It was a scream that I've never done and would never forget in my life. Even after many years, I have never once been able to scream like I did that day. I don't know why either, but it seemed that I had to stop my cousins somehow. Too scared to talk, I probably decided to scream. Freaked out, my cousins turned around to see me screaming like I was getting murdered. At the same time, that door that would originally be locked slammed so hard that it echoed through the basement. That caused my cousins to scream as well. Without thinking twice, I found that I was already turned in the opposite way, and running up those basement stairs like my life depended on it. My two screaming cousins not too far behind. I do not know what the hell possessed me to do this, but while running up those stairs, I turned towards the hallway we came from. There I saw it. Even now I don't know what it was. It looked like a woman, but it had no face. It was like a shadow peeking out around that corner, the same way it did when it peeked into the room when we were hiding in the closet. Once we got out of there, we made our way to the living room to see my mother standing there, with my aunt and a few more women. It was then we knew that the voice we heard did not come from my mother. As scared children, the adults quickly came to check what was happening and why we had screamed our way out of the basement. We quickly told the adults that there was someone downstairs in the basement. As parents, they quickly got the men to look downstairs to see if someone had broke into our home and snuck into our basement somehow. With a house full of children, it was necessary. While the men went to the basement, the women were trying to reassure us that everything was all right, while making merry talk with one another. About a good 30 minutes later, after a careful sweep of the basement, they came up empty-handed. They searched everywhere, so I would like to believe, but found no one. They even looked in the winery very carefully and found no clue whatsoever of anyone even being in there. Not a ruffle on any of the bedroom bedsheets. Not one item or decoration moved. Nothing. You can bet that after that day I slept in my parents' bed for weeks. My poor parents. But hey, I was scared beyond repair. Ever since that day, I also never went or stepped into that basement again. I was afraid to see that shadow peeking from around that corner, and more afraid of it tricking me into following it into the winery again. Whether it was just a homeless person that snuck in, or someone playing a messed up prank on us children, I was scared. Though I moved, and my parents no longer live in the same house, I still have not stepped in their current furnished basement. Since they moved in 5 years ago. I don't plan on it either. But that, ladies and gents, comes to the conclusion of why I'm scared of basements. That dreaded feeling I felt that day is very hard to describe, but I really hope, that none of you viewers will ever experience what I did that Thanksgiving. 5. This story takes place in the summer of 1996. I was 3 years old. My aunt had a friend from high school that she had recently found out had unfortunately died in a car accident. She did not know where the gravesite was, but knew of the cemetery where he was buried. She later told my mother, who knew of him but did not really know him well, and my mother had decided that she would go with her to help find the gravestone and pay respects with her. My mother did not have anyone to leave me home with at the time, so she brought me along to go get my aunt and go to the cemetery. I don't remember much, but I do remember at this time not understanding why my aunt was so upset. I know that I did not comprehend what a cemetery was, let alone the significance of it. I know I was just happy to go on an adventure outside with my family. My mom and my aunt felt hopelessly lost in the giant cemetery, reading stones and cleaning debris off some as they went along. I was gleefully skipping along, awing at the weird, pretty stone structures, with my mom consistently turning around to grab my hand and urge me along behind them. My mother said I had been asking her about what we were going to eat, as she pulled me forward by the hand, when suddenly I broke away without a word and stood still silently behind them. My aunt was startled by this, but my mom just asked, "What's wrong, honey? Why?" And I cut her off as I threw my arm out to the side without looking and pointed to the stone right next to where I was standing and said, "Stop, he's right here." My mom was stunned still, so my aunt proceeded to approach the stone I was pointing at. She made a quick wipe over the stone to make sure she could see it clearly, then checked the name and date of the stone and quickly said, "Oh, that's it. When did you start reading?" My mom quickly answered back, "She doesn't know how to." "How did you know that, sweetie?" she asked me. I seemed to snap out of a trance and laughed at them, saying, "He told me." Both my aunt and my mom looked at each other and decided to leave abruptly, cutting the visit short. I do not remember this clearly, but my mom and aunt do, and use this story and some others much like this to remind me how creepy I was before grade school. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Subscriber Stories, episode 73. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you have a story of your own you'd like to send in, please do send it along to kingofthecities@gmail.com. You can find the email address in the description of this and every video. More or less. And with that, I have begun work on about a week straight of work. I've got 14 videos to make. This is number 1. So I'm on my way, at least. I expect, well, I'm probably going to have to get my groceries delivered this week because I'm going to be too busy to actually go out shopping. Plus, I banged my knee up a little bit. Yes, I did do it while riding my bike. Completely my own fault because of my own carelessness. I wasn't even going that fast. I was just trying to adjust my jeans because I've got a couple new pairs of jeans and they're the same size as the old ones, same brand as well, which fit perfectly. Except these ones, for some reason, I guess they need to shrink or something. Toss them in the wash. And I hadn't done that yet, I just put them straight on. And they were kind of caught underneath my shoes. So I thought, I'll reach down and yank that quickly. I wasn't going that fast, as I say. Or did I say? Whatever. Anyway, I thought I'll reach down and I'll free that quickly. Then I'll get on my way. And it didn't work in the first attempt. Also didn't work on the second attempt, but the second attempt is when I lost my balance and completely fell over. Well, more or less. I fell against this fence and I wasn't too badly hurt, at least I didn't think I was. I had a bit of a scrape in my hand, but just a little one, wasn't too bad. And my legs were quite achy. I was like, oh, don't tell me I've done some serious damage here. So I forced myself to get up, and I got up okay. And I wasn't too far from home anyway, so I decided I'll wheel the bike the rest of the way because I can't be bothered riding. And so I did that. I got home, put my groceries away. I went down to the shop and took the time to yell at some children, of course. Always good to do that when you can. I wasn't just being a grumpy old bugger. It was just they were in the way, literally blocking the entire entrance. And I said to them, "Excuse me." And usually, if you're blocking the entire entrance, your bike's at your feet, you'd think, oh, perhaps we should move because people need to get in through the door, and we shouldn't stand out here looking at the stuff we've just bought. That didn't work. They looked at me like I was stupid, so my next response was, "Move." Anyway, completely irrelevant. So, went into the shop, bought whatever it was to buy. Probably a kind of rock star or something, knowing me. And then went back home, sat down. Then, but 30 minutes later, there was something else I needed. I think it was rolls or something else I needed, whatever it was. So I went down to get it. And I got that, and I came back up. It was fine. I'd been up and down the hill twice. Again, my legs were a bit achy, but I could walk. It was fine. I sat down, so I was sitting there on the sofa, surfing the web. Then suddenly, I kind of move about, and I thought, my right leg, the jeans feel kind of tight. So I felt where it felt tight, and it was swollen up so much that it was a little worrying. That went down a little bit, and just the longer it went on, eventually I was painful enough that I couldn't put pressure on it. I was reasonably sure I hadn't broken anything. Had I would have had to take a trip and get it seen to, but I was reasonably sure I hadn't broken anything. And ultimately, well, I'll cut this short, I'm just shammering on and on. So basically, I found a support thing I'd got a while ago. I couldn't get the elasticated bandage thing on because it was too swollen, and that wasn't quite big enough to get over the knee. But I had this other thing I eventually found, and put that on, and thank goodness I did, because once I put it on, about 30 minutes later, I was actually able to put a bit of pressure on the leg, so I could walk about. I could at least get into the kitchen, which was good, because I hadn't had dinner yet. I was at least able to get into the kitchen to make dinner, and about an hour later, I was able to walk about with, I was still limping a little bit, but it wasn't too bad. And today, it's much better, but it's still quite achy. So I'm probably not going to be, I'm certainly not going to be cycling up the street. The bike's okay, but I'm certainly not going to be cycling, just not in the mood. And I'm probably not going to be walking as well for a few days, so I'll likely be getting my groceries delivered. And that's yet another boring story, but I'll save that for the next video, perhaps. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.